A billionaire deal near approval, until a quiet waitress exposes the trap to the millionaire CEO. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to our main character. James Anderson, a billionaire CEO, sat at his usual table in the upscale Manhattan restaurant, his thoughts consumed with a lucrative deal that was almost signed, sealed, and delivered. The restaurant's soft lighting reflected off his sleek black suit, the only indication of the calm before the storm. James had built his empire with precision, careful planning, and relentless ambition. He trusted no one, relying solely on his sharp mind to navigate the cutthroat world of business. But today, there was something different in the air. The deal he'd been working on for months was about to be finalized, a deal that would cement his position as the undisputed leader in his field. The stakes were high, and he couldn't afford any distractions. As he stared at the paperwork in front of him, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the message, meeting in 30 minutes. He took a deep breath. Everything was falling into place. Just as he was about to place his phone back in his pocket, the sound of heels clicking on the polished floor reached his ears. He looked up, expecting to see the usual staff, but his eyes locked with Emily Parker, the quiet waitress who had been serving him for the past few weeks. Emily was no ordinary waitress. She had an aura of calm about her, an almost unnerving stillness that made her stand out in a room full of noisy, fast-moving professionals. James had never paid much attention to her, dismissing her as just another employee doing her job. But today, something about her seemed different. She was standing beside him, a glass of water in her hand, her expression neutral but somehow piercing. "Is everything to your satisfaction, Mr. Anderson?" she asked, her voice soft but steady. James gave a small nod, barely acknowledging her. "Yes, thank you, Emily," he replied, his mind still preoccupied with the deal. Emily didn't move, and for a moment, James felt a strange sense of discomfort. She was still standing there, her eyes fixed on him, as though she were waiting for something. "Actually," she said, her voice breaking through his thoughts, "there's something you should know about the deal you're about to close." James blinked, surprised. "What do you mean?" he asked, his tone betraying a hint of curiosity mixed with skepticism. "I overheard some things," she continued, her voice calm and measured. "Your partners are setting you up. They've been planning to deceive you for months. They're about to take you for a ride, and you won't see it coming." James froze. For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. A waitress, of all people, warning him about a business deal? It sounded absurd. But as he looked into Emily's eyes, he saw something that made him hesitate. There was no fear in her gaze, no sign of uncertainty, just an unwavering confidence that made him question everything. He set the glass down, his fingers gripping the edge tightly. "You're out of your mind," he muttered, more to himself than to her. "I know what I'm doing. This deal is ironclad." Emily didn't flinch. "You think so?" she asked softly. "You're about to make a big mistake, Mr. Anderson. A mistake you'll regret for the rest of your life." James felt his pulse quicken. This couldn't be happening. He was a seasoned CEO, a man who had outsmarted countless competitors. How could someone like Emily, someone who served him food and drinks, possibly know more about his business dealings than he did? "You're just a waitress," he said, his voice low and dismissive. "You don't know anything about this world." Emily didn't react. She simply watched him, her expression unreadable. "You're right," she said, her voice soft. "But I do know when someone's about to make a fool of themselves." For a moment, James stared at her, a mixture of anger and disbelief swirling inside him. He wanted to dismiss her, to order her to leave, but something in her words lingered in his mind. Something told him that Emily knew something he didn't. "What do you want from me?" he finally asked, his voice more controlled now. Emily paused for a moment before replying. "I just want you to pay attention. Trust me, you'll thank me later." James didn't know why, but he felt a flicker of doubt. Something in Emily's calm, steady demeanor was getting to him, making him question everything. He knew he couldn't ignore her warning. Not now. Not with everything on the line. James stared at Emily, his mind racing as he tried to process what she had just said. a quiet waitress, warning him about a multi-million-dollar deal he had been working on for months. It was absurd. She was just an employee, someone who brought him his food and drinks. What could she possibly know about the complexities of international business, mergers, and acquisitions? Yet, the confidence in her voice made him hesitate. He had faced countless adversaries in his career, but this felt different. He had spent years building his empire, and no one had ever dared to question his decisions. He had the final say in everything. But Emily was different. There was something about her that felt like a warning he couldn't ignore. "I don't know what you're talking about," James said, his voice firm, but there was an edge of uncertainty that even he could hear. Emily's gaze didn't waver. She wasn't intimidated by his power, his wealth, or his status. She simply met his eyes with the same steady, calm expression she had when she first approached him. "You will," she replied softly, her words cutting through the silence of the restaurant. "But it won't be until it's too late." James felt a chill run down his spine. Was she threatening him? He couldn't tell, but something in her words unsettled him. Why would she risk speaking to him like this? What did she have to gain? He had no idea who this woman truly was. All he knew was that she had no business being in the same room as him. Yet here she was, delivering a message he couldn't ignore. "I think you should leave," James said, the command in his voice clear. But Emily didn't move. Instead, she glanced at the door, where his business partner, Charles, had just walked in, oblivious to the tension that was building. "You think you can control everything," Emily said, her voice still calm. "But you can't. Not when the people you trust are lying to you." The words hung in the air between them, and for a brief moment, James felt like he was drowning in them. He was used to people fawning over him, trying to gain his approval. But Emily wasn't like that. She was different. She was challenging him. His entire life, he had built walls around himself to protect his empire. He trusted few, and even fewer earned his respect. But Emily was different. "What do you want from me?" he asked, his voice lower now, tinged with frustration. She finally took a step forward, her movements deliberate, her eyes never leaving his. "I want you to wake up," she said. "I want you to see what's right in front of you. You've spent years climbing to the top, but you're about to fall. Hard." James felt his pulse quicken. He had always been in control. He was the one who called the shots. But now, for the first time in years, he felt like he didn't have a clue. He had worked with Charles for over a decade, and they had always been a team. But Emily's words made him question everything. "You're lying," he snapped, trying to push the doubt from his mind. "You don't know anything about this deal." Emily's expression softened, but only slightly. "No," she said. "I don't know everything, but I know enough to see that you're being played." The words stung more than he cared to admit. He had always prided himself on his ability to read people, to see through their lies and deception. But this time, something was slipping through his fingers. "You think you can stop this?" he asked, his voice challenging. "You think you can just walk in here and tell me how to run my business?" Emily didn't flinch. "No," she said. "I'm just telling you what I see. The rest is up to you." With that, she turned and walked away, leaving James standing at the table, his mind racing. He watched her as she moved across the room, her calm demeanor never faltering. She had just done what no one else dared to do. She had questioned his authority. And now, for the first time in his life, James was questioning himself. James sat there, the weight of Emily's words pressing down on him like a 1,000-pound stone. He had always been the one in control, the one who made the decisions that shaped his empire. But for the first time in years, he felt uncertain. Was it possible that someone like Emily, someone he had dismissed as just another waitress, had seen something he hadn't? He reached for his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through the messages, trying to distract himself. Charles had just sent a message. "Everything's set for the meeting at 4 p.m. Are you ready to sign the deal?" James stared at the message for a long moment. Ready to sign? Was he really ready? His mind kept returning to Emily's warning. It wasn't like him to second-guess himself, but the more he thought about it, the more her words echoed in his mind. He needed to act. He needed to know the truth. James stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. The restaurant, once a place of calm and comfort, suddenly felt like a cage. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that this deal wasn't as airtight as he had believed. He walked out of the restaurant, his eyes scanning the bustling streets of Manhattan, as if searching for something that would reassure him. But nothing came. He hailed a cab and gave the driver an address, the law firm that had been helping with the deal. The firm had a reputation for being thorough, and if anyone could tell him whether something was wrong, it was them. The cab ride felt long, each minute stretching out like an eternity. By the time James arrived, he was a bundle of nerves, his usual confidence replaced with a gnawing uncertainty. He entered the building, the cool air of the lobby doing little to calm his racing thoughts. A receptionist directed him to a conference room where a few of the firm's top lawyers were waiting. James took a seat at the head of the table, his mind still spinning with questions. The lawyers were all business, their expressions professional, their voices calm as they discussed the details of the deal. But James wasn't listening. He couldn't focus. His thoughts kept drifting back to Emily, to the way she had spoken to him with such quiet authority. "Are you sure about this?" he asked suddenly, interrupting the discussion. The room fell silent, and all eyes turned to him. The senior partner, a tall man with graying hair, raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean, Mr. Anderson?" he asked. James swallowed hard. "Are you sure this deal is everything it appears to be? There's no hidden agenda, no traps waiting for me?" The partner looked taken aback, but quickly regained his composure. "Mr. Anderson, we've gone over everything thoroughly. There's nothing here that raises any red flags. This deal is solid." But James wasn't convinced. His mind kept racing, piecing together the fragments of doubt Emily had planted in him. What if she was right? What if he was being played? "I need a second opinion," James said, standing up. The partner's eyes narrowed slightly. "A second opinion? Mr. Anderson, this deal is already set. There's no need to, I want a second opinion," James interrupted, his voice firm. The senior partner looked at him for a moment, clearly frustrated, but nodded. "As you wish." James left the conference room and walked to his office across town. His mind was a whirlwind of thoughts, but there was one thing he knew for sure. He wasn't going to sign anything until he was absolutely certain. He needed to know what was going on behind the scenes, and he wasn't going to stop until he found the truth. He didn't know why Emily had spoken to him the way she did, but one thing was clear. She had planted a seed of doubt in his mind, and he wasn't going to ignore it. The next few hours were a blur. James reached out to a few trusted allies, people who had always been there when he needed advice. He asked them to look into the deal, to see if there was anything unusual about it. And while he waited, he couldn't help but think about Emily. What had made her speak up like that? What did she know that he didn't? For the first time in a long time, James felt like he was the one being tested, and he didn't know if he was going to pass. The afternoon slipped away, and by the time he got a call back from one of his contacts, it was already late. "There's something you need to see," his contact said on the other end of the line. "This deal isn't as clean as it looks." James felt his stomach drop. He wasn't sure what he had been expecting, but this was something else entirely. James could barely believe what he was hearing. The contact on the phone had just delivered a bombshell, something about the deal being manipulated, something he had missed entirely. He could feel his heart race as he listened, but he couldn't focus. His thoughts kept returning to Emily, the quiet waitress who had planted this seed of doubt in him. Was she right? Was he being played? The thought made him feel sick. "What exactly are you saying?" James asked, his voice tight with frustration. "The deal you're about to sign? It's a front. The people you trust most, they've been working behind your back for months. There's money being funneled into accounts that don't add up. You're being set up, James." The words hit him like a ton of bricks. He felt his breath catch in his throat. The deal had been his for the taking, the culmination of years of hard work and strategy. And now, it was all crumbling before him. He hung up the phone without another word and sat in his office, staring at the wall, trying to make sense of it all. It was impossible. How could this happen? He had trusted the people around him. Charles, his business partner, the lawyers, the accountants. Everyone had assured him that the deal was solid. But now he wasn't so sure. He reached for his phone again, but this time, he didn't check messages. Instead, he called his attorney directly, his mind already working overtime. "I need you to look at something. Dig deeper into the deal. I want every document, every transaction, traced. And I want it done fast." The attorney didn't hesitate. "Of course, Mr. Anderson. We'll get on it immediately." James leaned back in his chair and closed his eyes, the weight of the situation sinking in. He had been so close to achieving the next level of success. But now, it seemed like everything was slipping through his fingers. Was it her? James thought to himself. Emily. How did she know? How did she see it before I did? He couldn't shake the image of her calm, steady eyes as she spoke to him. She had been so sure. And he had dismissed her. Now, he was left with the unsettling feeling that she had been right all along. The next few hours passed in a blur. James stayed in his office, waiting for answers. He couldn't focus on anything else. His mind was consumed with the deal, with Emily's words, with the betrayal that seemed to be unfolding around him. Finally, his attorney called back. Mr. Anderson, you were right to be concerned. We found discrepancies, large ones. It's all connected. The deal you're about to sign? It's been compromised. You need to pull out now. James could hardly believe it. His whole world seemed to tilt on its axis. What do we do now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. We can expose them, but it'll take time. You'll need to make a public statement and be prepared for fallout. It's going to get ugly. James ran a hand through his hair, trying to process it all. This wasn't just about money. It was about trust. The people he had relied on, the people he had called his allies, they had betrayed him. And now, it was his job to fix it. He stood up from his desk and walked to the window, looking out at the city below. It had always been his city, a place where he could control everything. But now, for the first time, he felt like a stranger in it. His phone buzzed again, and he checked the screen. It was a message from Emily. You're not alone in this, Mr. Anderson. You'll figure it out. But don't wait too long. James stared at the message for a long time. How did she know? How could she have known all of this before him? He took a deep breath and made a decision. He wasn't going to let this deal ruin everything he had worked for. He was going to fix this. He was going to find out who was behind the trap and take them down. And maybe, just maybe, he would find a way to thank Emily. He dialed his business partner, Charles, and as the phone rang, James prepared himself for the conversation that would change everything. Charles, he said as soon as the line connected. I need to talk to you about the deal. We've got a problem. The storm was just beginning, and James Anderson knew it was going to be one of the hardest battles he had ever fought. James sat in his office, staring out at the New York skyline. The city had always been his domain, a place where he controlled everything. But today, it felt different. Everything had changed. The deal he had worked so hard to secure was slipping through his fingers, and the people he trusted most were the ones who had betrayed him. The weight of it all pressed down on him, but he couldn't afford to dwell on it. He had to act, and he had to act fast. His phone buzzed again, and he checked the screen. It was a message from Emily. You're not alone, Mr. Anderson. There's always a way out, but you have to be smart about it. Her words struck him again, and for the first time, he felt a sense of clarity. Emily had seen something he hadn't, something he had missed. She was right. He wasn't alone. He had the power to fix this, to take control of the situation. But he needed to do it quickly. He grabbed his coat and left the office, heading for the elevator. He had a plan in mind, and it started with confronting Charles. He arrived at the penthouse suite where Charles had been working on the final touches of the deal. As he entered, Charles looked up from his desk, a look of surprise crossing his face. James, I wasn't expecting you here. Everything is set for the signing. It's all in place. James didn't waste any time with pleasantries. No, it's not, he said, his voice cold. There's something wrong with this deal. I've been looking into it, and you've been lying to me. Charles froze, his expression faltering for a brief moment. What are you talking about? He asked, his tone defensive. I've been working on this deal for months, James. You know I wouldn't. Don't lie to me. James interrupted. I've seen the discrepancies. I know what you've been doing, and I know who you've been working with. You're about to cost me everything. Charles took a step back, his face pale. James, I don't know what you mean. I've always had your best interests at heart. But James wasn't buying it. You've been playing me this whole time. You've been working with the wrong people, and now, you're trying to drag me down with you. The silence that followed was heavy, and for the first time, James saw Charles for what he truly was. Just another person looking out for their own interests, willing to betray anyone to keep their position. I'm done, James said, his voice low and final. I'm pulling out of the deal, and I'm taking you down with it. Charles opened his mouth to protest, but James cut him off. You've got two choices, get out now, or go down with the ship. It's your call. James turned on his heel and walked out of the penthouse, leaving Charles standing in stunned silence behind him. As he made his way down the elevator, his phone buzzed again. It was Emily. You did the right thing, Mr. Anderson. But this isn't over yet. The real fight starts now. James looked at the message and felt a spark of determination ignite within him. Emily was right. The battle wasn't over. It was just beginning. He had the power to take control, and he wasn't going to let anyone, least of all Charles, take it away from him. He stepped out into the crisp New York evening, his mind focused and clear. This was his fight, and he was going to win it. He would expose the lies, take down the people who betrayed him, and come out on top. The world had underestimated him before, but now, he would show them just how wrong they were. James sat in his office, staring at his phone, the weight of the situation pressing down on him. He had made his decision. The deal was off. He had confronted Charles, and now the pieces were falling into place. But there was still so much to do. The truth about the deal needed to come out, and he was the one who would expose it. He leaned back in his chair, running his fingers through his hair, trying to steady his thoughts. Emily's words kept echoing in his mind, and for the first time in a long while, he felt a sense of clarity. She had been right. He had been blind, trusting the wrong people, and now, he was going to fix it. His phone buzzed again. It was Emily. "You're making the right move, Mr. Anderson. But you need to act fast. The people behind this won't give up easily." James didn't hesitate. He had already made up his mind. He needed to take control of the situation before it spiraled out of control. He grabbed his coat and walked out of the office, his steps firm, his mind focused. As he walked through the building's lobby, he spotted Charles, who was pacing back and forth, clearly agitated. Their eyes met, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "You're making a mistake, James," Charles finally said, his voice low. "You don't know what you're doing." James didn't flinch. "No, Charles. I know exactly what I'm doing," he replied, his voice steady. "And I'm not going to let you destroy everything I've worked for." Charles took a step forward, his expression hardening. "You're overreacting. This deal is solid, and you're throwing it all away." "No," James said, his voice firm. "You're the one who's been throwing everything away. You've been lying to me, and I'm done with it." Charles didn't say anything for a moment. He simply stood there, his eyes narrowing, and then he turned and walked away, not saying another word. James watched him leave, feeling a sense of relief wash over him. He had done it. He had taken control. But the real work was just beginning. He had to expose the truth, and he had to do it quickly. As he stepped out into the cool New York air, he could feel the weight of the city on his shoulders. He had been at the top for so long, but now, it felt different. He wasn't just fighting for success anymore. He was fighting for something bigger. He was fighting for his integrity, for the truth. And he wasn't going to stop until he had it. The next few days were a whirlwind of meetings, phone calls, and late nights. James worked tirelessly to uncover every detail of the deal, to piece together the web of lies that had been spun around him. He knew he couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even the people closest to him. He had to rely on his own instincts. And his instincts told him that he wasn't done yet. As the hours stretched on, James found himself questioning everything. How had he missed the signs? How had he let himself be manipulated for so long? But there was no time for regrets now. The clock was ticking, and he had to move fast. He had to protect his company, his reputation, and his future. And as much as he hated to admit it, he knew that Emily had been the one to open his eyes. She had seen something he hadn't. And now, he was going to make sure that nothing and no one would stop him from exposing the truth. By the time he had everything he needed, he was exhausted. But he wasn't going to rest until he had taken down the people who had betrayed him. He was ready to fight, ready to take back control. And nothing was going to stand in his way. James sat at his desk, staring at the documents laid out before him. The weight of the situation was almost unbearable, but there was no turning back now. He had spent the last few days digging into every aspect of the deal, uncovering layers of deceit that had been hidden beneath the surface. Charles had been part of it, but there were others too. People he had trusted, people he had called his allies, and now, they were all part of a scheme to bring him down. He had all the evidence he needed to expose them, but the next step wasn't going to be easy. He had to act strategically. This wasn't just about protecting his company anymore. This was about taking back control of his life. He needed to be smart about how he revealed the truth. The more he thought about it, the more he realized that the only way to truly expose what had happened was to go public. He couldn't just sit behind closed doors and let it all play out quietly. He had to make a statement, show the world that he was still the man who built an empire. He wasn't going to let anyone take that from him. As the hours passed, James' mind kept going back to Emily. The waitress. She had been the one to open his eyes, to show him that he had been blind to the truth all along. He had dismissed her at first, but now, he couldn't stop thinking about how she had been right. She had seen something in him, something he hadn't even seen in himself. He owed her. He knew he couldn't do this alone. She had given him the push he needed, and now it was his turn to repay her. James picked up his phone and dialed Emily's number. The phone rang a few times before she picked up. "Mr. Anderson," she said, her voice calm, steady as always. "Emily," James replied, his voice filled with gratitude. "I need your help." There was a pause on the other end. "What do you mean?" Emily asked. "I need you to come with me," James said, his voice firm. "I've got everything I need to take down the people who betrayed me, but I need someone who can help me make the right move. I can't do this alone." Emily didn't hesitate. "I'll be there," she said simply. "I'll help you however I can." James felt a sense of relief wash over him. With Emily by his side, he knew he wasn't just fighting for his company anymore. He was fighting for his dignity, for the truth. He made arrangements to meet her, and as he prepared to leave his office, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about reclaiming his future. As he stepped out into the cool night air, the lights of the city below him felt different. They felt like a challenge, a reminder that he had everything to lose, but he also had everything to gain. The next morning, James and Emily met at a small cafe, far away from the prying eyes of the business world. They sat down at a table in the corner, the quiet hum of the cafe around them providing a sense of calm amidst the storm. "What's the plan?" Emily asked, her eyes focused on him, her expression serious. James took a deep breath. "We go public. We expose everything. The truth, the lies, the manipulation. We make sure the world knows exactly what happened. And we make sure the people responsible pay for what they've done." Emily nodded, her expression unwavering. "You're doing the right thing," she said softly. James looked at her, his gaze steady. "Thank you," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "You were right. I never would have seen it without you." Emily gave him a small, knowing smile. "I just pointed you in the right direction. The rest was up to you." James felt a wave of gratitude wash over him. It had been a long, difficult road, but he was finally ready to fight back. With Emily by his side, he knew he could face whatever came next. Together, they would take down the people who had betrayed him. And in the process, James would prove that no one, not even those with power, could take what was rightfully his. James and Emily sat at a small corner table in the cafe, the weight of the moment heavy in the air. It was time. Time to expose everything. Time to take back control. Time to fight back against the betrayal that had nearly cost him everything. James looked at Emily, feeling an odd sense of gratitude for her presence, for the way she had helped him see the truth when no one else could. She was calm, steady, and unwavering, the perfect partner for what was about to unfold. "Are you ready?" Emily asked, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of determination. James took a deep breath, his mind racing through the details of the plan they had laid out. "I have to be," he replied, his voice steady. "We're doing the right thing. We expose the truth, and we make sure that the people responsible face the consequences." Emily nodded, her eyes never leaving his. "It's not just about them paying for what they did," she said softly. "It's about showing the world that even when people try to take you down, you can still stand up. You can still fight." James felt a flicker of admiration for her. She understood what this was really about. It wasn't just the business deal, the money, or the power. It was about integrity. It was about proving to himself, and to the world, that he wouldn't let anyone destroy what he had built. He stood up from the table, a sense of purpose flooding through him. "Let's do this," he said, the words firm and resolute. They walked out of the cafe and into the streets of Manhattan. The city was bustling, as always, but for James, everything felt different now. He was no longer the man who had been blinded by trust and ambition. He was a man who had seen through the lies and was ready to take action. He didn't know exactly what would happen next, but one thing was certain. He was in control of his own fate. As they walked to the office building where the press conference was set to take place, James could feel his heart pounding in his chest. This was it. This was the moment that would define everything. They reached the entrance to the building, and James took one last look at Emily. "Are you sure about this?" he asked, his voice quiet but filled with a trace of doubt. Emily smiled, her gaze steady. "There's no turning back now," she said simply. James nodded, his resolve hardening. They stepped inside, the elevator carrying them to the top floor where the conference room awaited. The room was already set up, the press waiting, the cameras flashing. James could hear the murmurs of reporters and the click of cameras as he walked into the room, Emily by his side. The moment he stepped up to the podium, the room fell silent. He could feel the weight of their eyes on him, the weight of the truth that was about to be revealed. "Ladies and gentlemen," James began, his voice calm but firm, "I am here today to set the record straight. The deal that was about to be signed, the deal that was supposed to secure my company's future, is based on lies, deception, and manipulation. And I'm here to expose it all." The room went still. You could hear the faint sound of cameras snapping, the quiet murmur of the crowd as James continued. "I trusted the wrong people. I trusted those who promised me success, but they were only working to deceive me, to take what was mine. But I'm not going to let that happen." As he spoke, James could feel a sense of liberation wash over him. This was his moment, his chance to make everything right. "I've worked too hard, built too much, and sacrificed too much to let anyone destroy it. This is my company. This is my legacy. And no one, not even those closest to me, will take that from me." The room was silent, the reporters stunned into inaction. James felt a sense of clarity that he hadn't felt in years. For the first time in a long time, he wasn't just fighting for money or power. He was fighting for himself, for his own sense of right and wrong. And as he looked at the crowd, he knew that this was the moment that would change everything. "I will not be silenced. And I will not let anyone take what's mine." The words hung in the air, powerful and undeniable. And as the room erupted into questions and chaos, James knew that the fight was just beginning. But this time, he wasn't alone. He had the truth on his side, and with Emily beside him, he was ready to take on whatever came next. The press conference room buzzed with the sound of reporters whispering to each other, the room alive with anticipation after James' statement. But for James, the moment felt surreal. He had just exposed the lies, and as the weight of the words sank in, he knew there was no going back. He had taken the first step toward reclaiming everything he had built. He looked over at Emily, who stood beside him, her eyes steady and focused. She had been right all along, and now, together, they were taking on the world. James took a deep breath and faced the sea of reporters, who were eager for more information, their cameras flashing and microphones poised. "You've made a bold statement today, Mr. Anderson," one reporter called out, breaking the silence. "Can you tell us what's next? What will you do to protect your company?" James stood tall, his posture commanding as he faced the press. "I will fight for the truth," he said, his voice unwavering. "This deal, and the people behind it, are nothing but a fraudulent scheme. I will expose every last detail, and I will ensure that those responsible face the consequences." Another reporter chimed in. "But what about your business partners? What do you plan to do about them?" James paused for a moment before answering. "I've made it clear. Those who were involved in this deception are no longer part of my future. I will take legal action, and I will make sure that no one else gets away with using their position to manipulate others." The reporters exchanged looks, scribbling down notes as James spoke with a newfound sense of clarity. He was no longer the man who had been swayed by others. He was the one calling the shots now. "What about Charles?" another reporter asked. "What role did he play in all of this?" The question caught James off guard, but he didn't falter. "Charles was one of the key players in this. He betrayed my trust, and as of today, he is no longer part of my company." His actions speak for themselves. The press room was silent for a moment, the gravity of the situation settling in. It was clear that James was not backing down. He was determined to bring the truth to light, no matter the cost. As the questions continued, James answered with authority, each word solidifying his position. He was no longer just defending his company. He was fighting for his dignity. As the conference wrapped up, the reporters began to file out of the room, leaving James and Emily standing in the quiet aftermath. James turned to Emily, a sense of gratitude washing over him. "I couldn't have done this without you," he said, his voice sincere. Emily gave him a small smile. "You did all the hard work. I just helped you see it." James looked at her, his respect for her growing by the minute. "No, Emily," he said softly. "You gave me the courage to take control. You opened my eyes when I couldn't see the truth." She nodded, her expression calm as always. "We all need someone to show us the way sometimes. I'm just glad I could help." James smiled, feeling a sense of relief that he hadn't felt in a long time. For the first time in what felt like forever, he wasn't carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders alone. He had allies now, and together, they would expose the lies and fight for what was rightfully his. Later that evening, as James sat in his office, reflecting on everything that had happened, he couldn't help but think about how far he had come. The road to this point hadn't been easy, but it had been necessary. He had been tested, and now, he had emerged stronger than ever. Emily had been the catalyst, but now, he was in control of his own destiny. He wasn't going to let anyone take that from him again. The next few days would be crucial. He would face legal battles, media scrutiny, and more challenges than he had ever imagined. But James Anderson was ready. He had been through the fire, and now, he would rise from the ashes. With Emily by his side and the truth on his side, there was nothing he couldn't overcome. As the city lights twinkled outside his office window, James felt a sense of hope he hadn't felt in years. The fight was far from over, but he was no longer fighting alone. And that, he knew, would make all the difference.